Bonamici starts by emphasizing something that often gets overlooked in public discussions about immigration enforcement. Many people who end up in detention have no criminal record at all. Some are long-term residents. Some have families, jobs, and deep roots in their communities. And in some cases, as she notes, even U.S. citizens have been mistakenly detained. The part of the testimony that hits hardest involves the treatment of pregnant detainees. That is not a small detail or an isolated incident. Detaining pregnant individuals carries enormous ethical and medical implications. Pregnancy is a state that requires constant monitoring, proper nutrition, and immediate access to health care if complications arise. Any lapse in care can put both the parent and the unborn child at risk.
Thank you, Congresswoman Jayapal, for holding this hearing, and thank you so much to the witnesses. It's unbelievable. And Ms. Voigt, thank you for talking about what used to be when we had civil rights and civil liberties enforcement. But we know right now that under the Trump administration, ICE has become an inhumane, lawless agency. In my home state of Oregon and across the country, we're seeing this extreme overreach, the brutal and aggressive tactics as ICE is hunting, arresting, and then detaining people, some of them U.S. citizens, most of them with no criminal record. Thank you, Representative Jayapal, for pointing out civil versus criminal violations. And many are parents of young children. As you mentioned, Ms. Pierre, your children are now without their father. We've seen ICE continuously escalate these horrific actions throughout the year. And today we're here to talk about the additional abuses that are suffered by people in detention and in detention centers across the country. These abysmal conditions, you really brought them to light with your testimony. The inhumane conditions, they're not giving proper medical care, scarce access to food and water. Ms. Pierre, you really highlighted that. I want to say I read the October 22nd, 2025 letter about the horrific experiences of pregnant detainees. And I must say, as a woman and a mother, I was gut-wrenching and I'm outraged. Nobody should have to suffer that kind of mistreatment and indignity. Any detainee in any condition and under any kind of moral, ethical, medical, or religious principles, this is disgraceful. In many cases, ICE agents coerce detainees to sign voluntary departure forms, sometimes without consent or translation, and sometimes asking detainees to sign the paperwork every day. Sometimes they revoke access to phone calls until detainees sign deportation paperwork, which is blatantly illegal. Sometimes they have them sign it without counsel. ICE's abuses even extend to some detainees who want to sign detention paperwork voluntarily. Actually, I have a constituent in Oregon who wants to go back to Mexico and sign the paperwork, but instead of deporting him, ICE transferred him not once but twice to different detention facilities, first to Texas and then to Louisiana, and held him in solitary confinement. Why is ICE holding him? It's cruel. It makes no sense. He signed the paperwork voluntarily. Maybe this is because the private prison company gets paid for every day he's there. It's really outrageous. So my state of Oregon, we don't have a detention center, so people are sent immediately up to Tacoma, Washington. It's almost at capacity. Detainees are often quickly transferred to other facilities across the country, creating additional hardships for families, lawyers, congressional staff like mine who are trying to assist our constituent. And I want to ask Ms. White, how does moving detainees across the country create barriers to due process?
Yeah, absolutely. When detainees are transferred, it can take a long time for people to even know. I'm talking about family members, I'm talking about attorneys, to even know where their attorney or their client or loved one has been transferred. That can impede legal access when filings need to happen very quickly, which I'm sure is something my co-panelists can talk about as well.
Thank you very much. I also want to mention the bond hearings that was brought up. That's been an issue as well in the Pacific Northwest, and I was able to help a constituent get out of detention because of that conflict between the federal court judge who said you get to post a bond. His paperwork even said we can't give you a bond hearing, but if we did, it would be this amount. So I hope that gets resolved in favor of letting people get out. I wanted to ask. I know the ACLU was one of the senders of the letter about the pregnant detainees. Have you actually received a response from ICE to that letter?
Not that I'm aware of.
That's not surprising. We frequently do not get responses. And real quickly, I just want to invite all of my colleagues to join me. I recently introduced House Resolution 6349, the Migrant Due Process Protection Act, that will allow people to have their removal hearings held either by telephone or video conference to keep them safe. So thank you very much.
Thank you. What we just heard from Representative Suzanne Bonamici is more than outrage. It's an attempt to illuminate a series of systemic failures inside immigration detention that most people never see, let alone fully understand. Her testimony and the experiences she references point to a deeper problem that goes far beyond any single administration or facility. When oversight weakens and transparency breaks down, vulnerable people pay the price. When Bonamici says the accounts were gut-wrenching, she's not using dramatic language. She's responding to documented claims of mistreatment, neglect, and conditions that medical standards simply do not allow. Her mention of coerced signatures on voluntary departure forms highlights another critical issue: power imbalance. Inside detention, where people are separated from legal support, language access is inconsistent, and information is tightly controlled, individuals may be pressured into choices they don't fully understand. Removing access to phone calls until documents are signed, if true, represents a direct violation of basic legal rights. It also undermines the entire process, because consent given under pressure is not genuine consent. There was also the troubling account of a detainee who wanted to voluntarily return to Mexico, signed the necessary paperwork, and still found himself transferred across multiple facilities and placed in solitary confinement. This raises questions about the motivations behind certain transfers and whether financial incentives for private facilities influence decisions about where and how long individuals are held. If private operators are paid per detainee per day, then prolonged detention, even when unnecessary, can become a financial benefit. These are structural issues deeply woven into how detention is organized in the United States. Bonamici also touches on transfers creating disturbances in due process. When someone is moved, their family may not know where they've gone. Their attorney may not receive notification in time. Hearings can be missed. Evidence can be delayed. Legal representation can break down altogether. For a system that hinges on deadlines, filings, and precise timing, even a small disruption can derail an entire case. Another layer involves the difficulty of bond hearings. When federal courts conflict with internal policy or agency interpretation, detainees may end up stuck in legal limbo, eligible for release in theory, but unable to access the process that would secure that release in practice. And then there's the issue of unanswered oversight. Letters documenting poor treatment, like the one concerning pregnant detainees, often go without response. Silence from an agency that holds power over thousands of lives is not a bureaucratic quirk. It's a signal of a system where accountability measures are inconsistent, overwhelmed, or simply not functioning as intended. Taken together, these testimonies reveal a complex ecosystem: private contractors, shifting federal directives, limited transparency, inconsistent standards, and individuals caught in the middle with limited avenues to advocate for themselves. The experiences described are not only about immigration, they're about the fundamental responsibilities of institutions that hold human beings in custody. The deeper takeaway is that detention does not exist in isolation. Every policy decision, every oversight breakdown, every staffing shortage, and every administrative delay shapes real lives. Understanding these stories helps reveal where systems need strengthening, where oversight must be more robust, and where human dignity needs to be protected regardless of someone's immigration status or legal situation.